Yadi, where have you seen mentoring in your model for youth ministry, and how important is that adult youth relationship?
Well, one of the things about youth ministry is to make sure that you have volunteers that are fans of young people, like right off the bat, right? And so, in part of the interview process, I will ask things like, "So, tell me about your gifts. Tell me about what gets you really excited." And so, some would say, "Well, I love music. I love gaming. I love cooking. Oh, I'm a big book nerd." And so things like that that they would say. I'm a big Harry Potter nerd, and or they would say all kinds of stuff, and it sounded at first when I would take these interview questions and I would jot things down, I was just sort of interviewing, right? But then later I started thinking about, the kids are struggling, and sometimes in trying to fit in, and sometimes they're struggling in trying to understand, like, who's going to listen to me. I'm a big nerd who reads books, and I don't like sports, and I am terrible at music, and I'm this and that. And then I would say, "So is so and so." And so connecting those people, connecting different people with gifts with young people, even if it was to say, "Hey, have you read this book? Oh my God. So I saw this book at the library, get it at the Dallas Library." Because I would also tell them, when you talk about books, make sure the library has it. Make sure that they can go rent it. Make sure they can get it at, because we don't want to talk about something that they're not going to have, or make sure you have an extra copy. Like, "Hey, I have this extra copy that I can lend you." And so then I had someone who said, "Well, let's just start making a book show here, and let's just start putting books that kids can take out." And so this person loved books, that was and fiction and nonfiction, and so all these things started coming up. Another person said they love art, and so I said, "Well, I can open the room on Saturdays, and while I'm here doing some work, and let's have an art show. Let's have a art, whatever." And while you're painting, or while you're drawing, or while you're gaming, or while you're doing whatever you're doing, you really are mentoring. You really are having a conversation, and you really are connecting with people that sometimes would not feel like they're seen, valued, and or they themselves are the worst critics, right? And so I had a young man who said, "I don't care if I'm called a nerd. One day I'm gonna own all the world banks and I'm gonna be a millionaire." And so everybody started laughing about it. And so a guy that was there, he goes, "He's not joking. I'm a banker." And so it was funny, but it was like he felt validated. Like, yeah, see, and so mentoring is so important, because it's not about who's the best here, who has the more knowledge. It's simply who is there to be supportive, who is there to be, to remind them that one day I was young and I was this little skinny little nerd who liked to draw behind napkins, and now I do graphic design, and whatever. Now there are some mentoring programs that you can set in place that are more structured, and I've had those before. Like I said, I had this young person who um, who was an immigrant who was learning Mandarin, who wanted to do all this. And so she wanted to be a social worker. And so I created more of a mentoring program with another person who was a social worker at the church that loved helping people. And so we created this thing where they would meet every Friday. It was structured, and they would meet to talk about different projects they had going on. They would meet, and there was more structure. Like, parents knew they were meeting, and they would create things. So we've done both of those. Um, Youth board, if you create youth boards, like we had a youth board at the youth center, and it's amazing. If you create a youth ambassador program, where the kids run for office, and things like that, then you bring in leaders, business people, and that mentoring can happen also. So